pituitary, describe the chemistry, synthesis, regulation, target tissue, mechanism of action, and physiological function. So you can do it as a list, you can do it as a table, bullet points, whatever, there's 6 of them. Second question, or second option. Describe, explain, compare, and contrast hormone action via nuclear cytoplasmic receptors versus membrane receptors. Third option. Tell me everything you know about melatonin, its chemistry, synthesis, regulation, mechanism of action, and function. Fourth option. Choose one of the positive feedback loops involving both the reproductive and the endocrine system and describe it in detail, explaining all the elements of the loop during the initiation, duration, and end of the process. Can you also explain why is this function regulated by positive and not by negative feedback loop? You've already talked about it before for first exam. This should be familiar ground. You just know more details now about, let's say, positive feedback loop in ovulation, if you want that one, but also in birth and in lactation. For copulation, you will have to search the web. I didn't say anything, and your book doesn't say anything which hormones are involved, because they're different in males and in females.
Can I search in Wikipedia?
Wikipedia is an excellent source of information for most scientific topics. It's a good starting place. It has good references. Often Wikipedia articles are too detailed, too high level of detail for what you need. But you can skim it and find the basic information and then skip the rest. There's going to be another essay question. You're going to have 4 choices. First choice, describe the process of oogenesis and its regulation from the initial stem cell of the egg all the way to the mature oocyte ready to be ovulated. The second option, describe all the steps leading to ovulation and all the hormones involved. The third option, describe and explain the process of folliculogenesis in the ovary, including the hormones involved and the stage of development of the egg cell within it, up to and including the ovulation and the formation of the yellow body. And fourth option, from its early formation to the moment of fertilization, the sperm cell travels a long and convoluted path through the male and female body. Trace the maturation, process of maturation, and migration, the location where everything is happening, of sperm, starting from stem cells all the way to ejaculation and fertilization. So from the beginning to the end, where happens what? What happens where? What glands add their secretion to the semen, and what are the compositions and functions of those secretions? And then bonus questions. There are also 4 choices. First choice, how do reproductive systems develop in females and males? Which sex is default in humans? Which gene on which chromosome triggers a switch from the default sex to the derived sex? Which part of the reproductive system makes that switch due to genetic influences, which due to testosterone? Which parts are replaced by different parts, and which parts are transformed into new parts? So I was just talking about it for quite a long time, a few minutes ago, the whole process. Second option, what is puberty? That's straight out of textbook. How are secondary sexual characteristics formed in males and in females? What hormones are involved? Describe the organizing versus activating roles of testosterone in the development of male secondary sexual characteristics.
That's more easier. So
That's your choice, obviously. Okay. Third choice. Use your understanding of negative feedback loops to explain how and why consumption or injection of androgens in bodybuilders negatively affects the reproductive system in males. Again, something I explained a few minutes ago. And the fourth option is, what is placenta? What does it do? Where does it come from during early pregnancy? And what is its evolutionary origin? Why platypus, echidna, wombat, kangaroo, and opossum don't have it, while most other mammals do? Do you know the answer to that question? No. Okay. So you've taken a class like 112, right, where you learn about mammals, and you learn that there's monotremes, there's marsupials, and there's placental mammals. And most mammals are placental mammals. Monotremes, you know what are monotremes? Platypus and echidna, right? 2 little, groups of species, like there's like 3 species of echidna, one of platypus, I think. So 4 species of mammals that lay eggs. And then marsupials are those with pouches, kangaroos and koalas and possums and whatnot. So they give birth to really, really tiny, very early, fetuses, right? They're really, really tiny, completely blind and helpless, and they crawl into the pouches and latch onto the nipple, and that's how they get, antibody from the mom and nutrition from the mom and all that stuff, and grow inside of the pouch. And yet most of the mammals don't do any of that. Instead, they stay inside. How do they stay inside? Why do they stay inside? Because there is such a thing as placenta. Where did the placenta come from? It came from one of these marsupials, hundreds of millions of years ago, getting a viral infection of some sort. Catch a flu. And you know how viruses work. They embed themselves into the genome in order to make transcripts of many, many more viruses, right? To replicate inside of the cell. And it usually happens in your, lining of your epithelia like COVID does or whatnot. In this case, it got embedded into the genome of a gamete, either an egg or a sperm cell, and resulted in offspring. So offspring had that virus also in the genome. And that virus did not negatively affect this organism, right? And it got embedded. It probably for a while became junk DNA, does not transcribe at all, silenced. And then, it was free to mutate, right? Doesn't matter. Over many generations it mutated, and at some point that mutated version started being transcribed again, and suddenly it had an effect on the embryo. And the effect of the embryo was this. Instead of fertilized egg dividing into 2, 4, 8, 16 and not many cells, and all of that becoming the embryo, part of that embryo, almost half of that embryo, instead of developing into the embryo, developed into an organ that kind of glued this to the inside of the uterus and allowed it to stay there without dying, gaining some nutrition from the mom, kind of latching onto the cardiovascular system of the mom, and thus staying inside of the mom a little bit longer. What does it mean? That means more safety. It's much safer being inside of the big mama than inside of an egg that a snake can eat, or a tiny little baby that is going to get cold or unlatched from the nipple or whatever and die. So being inside with the mom and getting fed from mom's cardiovascular system is a much safer and better way to live, right? And so suddenly there's natural selection to make this even longer and longer and longer. So this virus, HERV, human endogenous retrovirus, if canine is CERV. So those are ERVs. Now we call it syncytine. That gene is syncytine, which is the gene that turns on a few other genes, and they together build a placenta, which is about half of the mammalian embryo becomes the placenta, the other half becomes an embryo and fetus and everything else, which allows us to keep our offspring inside of the mother for many, many months, which is a safer place to be. Which then was a problem for the mom, because suddenly you have this enormous parasite inside of you that is trying to suck the life out of you. And so the uterus became much more protective, became castle with a moat and alligators in it to protect the mom from the baby, right? And so that's the origin of the placenta, and why placenta had the effect that now embryo can stay much longer, and hopefully it's encased inside of the uterus, because if it escapes outside of the uterus, it's ectopic pregnancy, which is going to kill the mom, because that embryo is going to latch onto a liver or mesentery or kidney or something full of blood, and it's going to suck all of that nutrition out of the mother and kill the mother. So there's a fight between those two. Any questions? You can turn that off.
Yeah. So what's the specific difference between